Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Universe. I am Aaron St. Dennis. Follow me everywhere at FF Mad Scientist because, as I loaded in the graphics, somehow I have cut my own Twitter handle off the screen, but I do shit like that just for fun. Today, I'm joined by Jeremy Schulman at FF_Rebel and Jesse Moeller at JMoeller05. We are here to talk some redraft quarterback rankings. This is a little bit of a balance between rankings here. We're going to kind of break them into tiers if we can agree on tiers. The word consensus is loosely based here. I think this is going to lead to a lot of arguing and fuck you, I don't want that guy in this tier, but we're going to see how it goes. So
yeah, wait till we get to Derek Carr.
Who?
What? We're ending the show before we get that far. We're going to keep it under an hour. There's no way there's not an hour worth of quarterbacks between us and Derek Carr. So
no, I don't know.
I'm going to bet I'm the highest on Derek Carr. I'm not that high.
I put him on do not draft. So yeah.
No, I'm typically the high guy on Derek Carr because I don't love Derek Carr, but at some point I will take him. Like I think what was it the Dynasty League we started up with a bunch of the guys at work. I punted quarterback completely, and I ended up with the combo of Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. I'd rather have Derek Carr than that. At least I know I have Derek Carr, and I'm starting Derek Carr. Those two, I'm wasting 2 roster spots, and I still might not have a quarterback. So I guess it's all relative. At this point, I might even take him over Drake May, who doesn't look like he's going to start, but what the hell do I know? So I guess we will start at the top. That seems like a good place to avoid Derek Carr. Sorry, I'll behave. So, I will go through for me. The top tier is 4. I think this is probably going to be consensus for most of us. I have it as Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Mahomes. I think I have Allen at number 1 pretty much across the board. I flip-flop between the others. Even when I was reading my rankings here on Fantasy Pros, I wasn't sure which order I had it in today. Apparently, I'm bipolar. Some days it's Lamar, some days it's Mahomes, some days it's Hurts, which is why I typically have whichever of the 3 is the last to go off the board in this tier, because I think pretty much all of them are equally valued, and I want one of these 4. Like most of my drafts, I've tried to leave with a top 4 tight end and a top 4 quarterback. For me, this is the first major cutoff. Any major disagreement there in that tier? Not necessarily the rankings, but the tier?
No, I mean I have Lamar outside of the truly like the elite first tier, but like you can.
No, you're fucking fired. Anyway. You're fired.
Exactly. I don't see the ceiling case for Lamar anymore. That's my biggest concern with him. Like that's where my question mark comes in. But yeah, like he could be the QB1, yeah, for sure. So yeah, if you want to put him there, I'm with you.
Yeah, look, if Jesse's fired, then you might as well just try to assassinate me because I only have 2 in my top tier. It's Patrick Mahomes.
I'm just muting. I'm gonna mute both of you and do the show myself. Fuck, we're fighting already. Just okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Patrick Mahomes at number 1, far and away, and Josh Allen in my tier 1. Everyone else in tier 2. It's a big tier 2.
No Hurts. That's baffling.
No,
I'm so baffled. Hurts is my QB1.
No, not for me. No, I think Saquon's going to eat into his rushing across the board. Hurts is still going to be fine, but it's enough for me to drop him to number 3 and out of the top tier.
Well, but that's another one where I'm sure there's plenty of days where Mahomes, like when we have to submit these, Thursday at noon for final rankings on Fantasy Pros, it's very possible Patrick Mahomes might go in as my QB1 on the season, just because I think by far he's the safest. And obviously sometimes, if it's 4 point per passing touchdown, he's probably the worst out of the 4. But I don't know about you guys. I don't play in any of those leagues. I hate 4 point. But like I said, that's for me why I just take the cheapest out of the 4, because I have it pretty much 4 across the board here. Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, and Jackson in some order. So Jeremy, you said you have Mahomes number 1.
Yeah.
Jesse, you said Hurts.
Yeah, I have Hurts 1, yeah.
I think in the end, I would say Mahomes is probably our consensus 1, because for me, I currently have him at 4, but I haven't updated mine today, and I think he's either going to end up at 1 or 2 for me. So I feel much safer with Mahomes at number 1 than I do Allen, but I am traditionally the rushing quarterback, the anti-rushing quarterback guy in the group. So maybe that's why I roll that way. You guys want to move on to the next tier here?
Yeah,
Sure.
Okay, so for me, the next tier is 3 guys, obviously, because I had 4 in the top tier. I have it as Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. I realize Richardson's the riskiest there. I think CJ Stroud might regress a little. He's due for some more interceptions. I think Joe Burrow's being vastly underrated here. So that's how I see 5, 6, 7. Burrow, Stroud, Richardson. What do you guys got for your tier 2?
You want to take a turn?
Sure. I don't know.
That didn't sound very convincing.
No. So, my tier 2 is 5 guys. So I have the rushing quarterbacks. That's Hurts at the top, then Lamar, A-Rich, and Murray. Sandwiched in the middle at 5 is CJ Stroud. So it's the 4 rushing quarterbacks and Stroud. I just think Stroud has the potential to go nuclear this season. I'm not banking on it. I'm not assuming it's going to happen. But I think there's at least a 50-50 chance that Stroud goes totally off. Like I said yesterday, I think he's going to lead the league or at least be second in the league in passing yardage if that comes with touchdowns. If Dalton Schultz goes double-digit touchdowns, which is possible because he's getting it from CJ Stroud, then Stroud could, approach 40, 45, even 50 touchdowns and be in that Patrick Mahomes God tier. Will it happen in the second year? I don't know, but I'm not going to put it past him.
Yeah, if my whole issue with Stroud, like my second tier is guys that could be QB1. I don't have Stroud there because the rushing just isn't there. So, like, for him to be QB1, if he's putting up a Tom Brady season, that's still only like 22 points a game. And I need somebody that can give me that ceiling of 25 points a game. So if he adds rushing to his game, yeah. So for me, I have 3 guys there. I have Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. These are all the mobile rushing quarterbacks who, if they hit their ceiling, then they're tier 2 for me. The guys I have down with like Burrow, Stroud, I have Dak, I have a couple rookies. So my tier 3 is actually pretty big, but it's about 7 through 12. So my first tier is just those 6.
Do you see him adding rushing upside? Because for me, I don't. Joe Mixon's there now. I think Mixon takes low enough.
He's definitely an athlete. You've seen it, like you've seen the speed now. He just doesn't do it. So it's really hard for guys who are not mobile to kind of like turn that on and change that in their game once they reach the pros. So that's kind of my one question mark with Stroud. But yeah, I think the floor is incredibly high with him. Like him and Burrow and all those guys and Dak and Jordan Love. Like I think they're all very similar bets this year.
I just think the situation is crazy for him. Obviously, he's got the 3 receivers. Schultz is certainly capable. We'll see what happens out of the backfield there. It's possible they use someone other than Mixon a bit more to get some work going, out of the backfield for him. But yeah, I just think he's too good. I think Bobby Slowick really is that wild card there. It's almost like an Andy Reid level with Patrick Mahomes. So he's Patrick Mahomes light. But if he's able to just hit another level in the second year, I'm not going to rule out Stroud going off.
All right. Well, so I'm through 2. I guess we're all through 2 tiers. I have 7 players so far. I've switched it now. I agreed there. I went Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Hurts in tier 1, Burrow, Stroud, Richardson. How many of you guys do you have so far, both of you, through 2 tiers?
I have 6. I don't have Burrow. I have Kyler. So it's Richardson, Lamar, Kyler. So like basically just flop Burrow and Kyler, and that would be mine.
Yeah, and I have 7. Kyler's my 7. So Stroud 5, Richardson 6, Kyler 7.
So it seems to be basically the same 7 players, except you guys subbed in Kyler for Burrow. I had Burrow. That's where I get into the next tier. Tier 3 for me, it's tough. For me, tier 3 is definitely Kyler, definitely Dak, and then I have Jaden Daniels as the last guy in the tier. I'm not sure. I feel like if it weren't for rushing upside, he's definitely into the next tier.
Okay.
I don't know. He's a bridge for me. This is the first one I've really had to debate. So tier 3 for sure. Like I said, Kyler and Dak. I think Jaden Daniels is the end of my 3rd tier. So I guess I'll include him there. What do you guys have now? Right in this range?
Yeah, I have both rookies in this range because of the upside. Like the floor is so high with Jaden Daniels. It's more if the passing comes along, that's how you get the ceiling. But I think worst case, he's going to be top 14 quarterback just based on points per game and how he plays. I think Caleb deserves to be in here because he is also mobile, that part of his game. He's similar to Aaron Rodgers where he gives you that mobility so he can get you there. and he's just a phenomenal quarterback in a really good situation. I have Jordan Love at 9. I have Joe Burrow 10, Dak Prescott 8, and CJ Stroud 7. So that's like that entire tier for me. I think a lot of these passers that we're talking about are all kind of similar bets. So that's why they all fall into this tier 3 with the upside from the rushing quarterbacks. Because once you get past those guys, it's really like you want to go Goff, Lawrence, and all that fun stuff. But like I think those guys you can all make the bet to be like really high end quarterbacks this year.
Yeah. For me, I have the rookies just outside of this tier. They're 12 and 13. So my tier 3 is 4 guys. It's Burrow at 8, Love at 9, Dak at 10, and Purdy at 11. I just think, these guys it's going to depend on touchdowns for them. You might have Dak kind of rushing in a few more TDs there, especially with what's going on. His volume will be crazy. I just love the talent of Burrow and Love and what they have around them. Dallas is suspect in a lot of different ways. So I don't trust Dak to do it without that cupcake schedule that he had last season. Do I trust him as my QB1 on my fantasy team? Yes. But I don't necessarily trust him to beat out these guys, depending on what happens in season. So, but the rookies are right there. They're just outside this tier for me.
Did my internet just go out there? As you can tell, I have a distraction here. Someone decided they needed to get themselves a snack, and as they were making noise on my stream, decided to take off running and almost took out my entire computer with them. I love kids. Okay, so I am 10 players in through tier 3 here. I like Kyler the most out of the tier 3 quarterbacks.
Yes.
I think the rushing upside rebounds now that he's healthy. Dak, I think, is a straight up passing volume touchdown option here. I don't think there's much left of the rushing upside. Jaden Daniels, I think, has the rushing and the passing upside. He's just obviously the riskiest, so that's why he's 3 for me. I get into tier 4, and this is where, like I said, 3 tiers, 10 players. Tier 4 here, I've just got a cluster, and I'm not even sure where to cut this off. I've got to start, I have Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams. I feel comfortable there. I think I cut it off there for me because the next tier for me is Lawrence, Goff, Tua, Herbert. And I think they belong in their own tier. So for me, tier 4 is Love, Purdy, Williams. And then I'm not really as comfortable with the next group. What do you guys got for tier 4?
So I'm curious, what's the differentiator between like Goff and Purdy for you? Because I think that's an interesting question to kind of play through. Like I view them very similarly. If you want to make the case for one of those guys, for sure. I just don't know. Like what separates them into 2 tiers for you? That's more question.
Purdy has more weapons, I think.
Okay.
That's really the end for me. Purdy has more weapons.
I struggle with Goff because he's set up to smash this year because like the seal, everything's there. They play all the games in the home. Like everything's working well for them, James Williams. So like I could see a case where if the defense doesn't fully come along, like we could see a monster season from Goff. But your point was more the floor play.
I'm in the Detroit area here, and Dan Campbell wants to run the most boring old school offense you've ever seen. So I think it's entirely possible they may just run the ball into the ground, and that scares me a little. Whereas the Niners seem a little bit more likely to turn it loose. I think they're both game managers in the end. So, that's like I said, I could have probably included Lawrence and Goff into this and made it a 5-player tier. But if I'm in a draft, I'm far more comfortable with Jordan Love. Jordan Love, I guess, is where it is. And then, you're right. Like Lawrence and Goff, you could make the argument that this could be a 5-person tier for me. I put it as 3, and I'm not 100% sure. As you talk, I think I may have convinced myself to expand it a bit because, like I said, outside Love, who's only got 1 year of proven production, I feel pretty evenly about the rest. I think Caleb has the most upside. Lawrence kind of scares me if he's going to bounce back. And Goff and Purdy are kind of the same thing. I don't know. It's really a icky tier for me here where I know I said in the top tier I wanted the last guy. In this tier, I want the first guy. I want Jordan Love as the first guy off the board for me.
Yeah, I think Love's a really good bet. I think what's interesting is San Francisco just doesn't pass a lot. Like they've been at 30 pass attempts the last 3 years per game. Like they're bottom of the NFL. So it's hyper efficiency. Like at least Detroit is more willing to pass. Like they're higher up when you go pass attempts per game. Like last year they were at 36 basically. So that's a pretty wide gap. And Purdy usually makes up for his 7% touchdown rate. Like that's what he's been at. So you could make the case like he's going to come down because he's been so hyper efficient with touchdowns. But and the offense is so good with Shanahan, it's just really hard for me to bet against Purdy with those guys.
But that's what worries me, because last year in that scenario, Purdy outproduced Goff for fantasy. I don't think that's the same scenario. I think it might hold true for the 49ers. I think the Lions defense got significantly better, and they're going to run a more old school grounded pound. You know, they're going to milk the clock here. They're going to be working the lead. Detroit, I don't think is going to be the old Detroit where it was, you know, my two favorite teams, Lions and Saints, playing a 49-48 game. I think the Lions played a little bit differently this year, because we seen in the Niners game at the end of the season, you know, their Achilles heel seemed to be the secondary, but I think it's grossly improved. Obviously, it's some rookies, but I don't know. I just think the Lions, you said it was 30 for the Niners, 36 per game for the Lions. I think that ends up being more like 30 and 32 or something like that. So it still might slightly favor the Lions, but I'm a little concerned the Lions are a little more conservative this year.
But also the fact that Jared Goff finished as QB7 in 6-point leagues last year, you know, and threw the ball 605 times is kind of something we're all saying, you know, Goff is lower for us. We're seeing that probably regress, but he threw 30 touchdowns. And Jesse, as you mentioned, he's got the weapons in place. JMO looks good. They just signed Tim Patrick and Allen Robinson to the practice squad, meaning they don't need these guys on the actual team. But they're there and capable enough in a very highly functional offense to plug and play those guys and see a little bit of production and veteran leadership there if they need them. So the team is set up all around, and you have Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield, might as well be CMC. So I agree with you. These situations are very similar, and I think Goff has upside here. The problem is Goff isn't very good. It's just everything else around him is good. He's accurate at least.
Yeah, I'd view him as like a borderline top 10 quarterback. He's in that range. Like, he's a little worse than Dak Prescott to me, but he's in that, you know, like, you can get yourself similar to Purdy. Like, you can get yourself to a championship with him. But the wide receiver depth is really thin there, to your point. Like, they brought in those guys on the practice squad because they still need James Williams to step forward. If James Williams doesn't take a step forward, you're counting on guys that are just not the best NFL quality wide receivers besides Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Thankfully, they have Laporta, they have Gibbs and those guys. But still, yeah, like, the depth similar to Dallas does worry me. Like, imagine if CeeDee Lamb goes down or if Amon-Ra St. Brown goes down in those offenses, it dramatically impacts those offenses more than like almost any other player in the NFL. That's the one thing that worries me, but I hate trying to like count for injuries.
If we're in a super flex league, I don't care. Like, if Jordan Love's my QB1, I'm fine with that. After Love here, I think that's the last guy I want as my QB. I could be convinced if I've absolutely missed anyone. So I've expanded my tier 5 to 5 players. So I ended up ranking it Love, Purdy, Williams, T-Law, Goff. With the exception of Love, I'd far prefer the other 4 to be my QB2. Like I said, if I've really, really missed, I'm fine with them as my QB1, but I'm not going into a draft saying I'm going to come out with Jared Goff as my QB1. I'm much rather having a high upside QB2 than a low upside QB1. So that's kind of, like I said, Love is the top of this tier, and even maybe Love should have been bumped up a tier. I don't know. Did anybody else have Love? Did anybody think he's kind of the bridge here? Nobody really thought he belonged with Murray, Prescott, and Daniels, but Purdy, Williams, you do have him up a tier?
Yeah, he's my QB9
above all those guys. Same.
So maybe that's the answer for me. Maybe the answer is my tier 4 becomes 4 players in Murray, Dak, Daniels, and Love. And then my tier 5 is 4 players in Purdy, Williams, T-Law, and Goff, because Love definitely seems like the odd man out in this tier, because I think we'd all agree you're taking him over the other 4 or whoever you have in that tier.
Yeah. The rookies are the ones that stand out to me as like kind of the values in that group. So like the way I play fantasy is I'm gonna shoot for the upside. I'm gonna take those guys over the Purdy's and the Goffs and all of that, just because I want the guys that can possibly give me the ceiling. And you could debate if Caleb Williams has it. I view Caleb Williams as having that ceiling. Now you want to talk about Shane Waldron and all that BS that goes on in Chicago. Could be interesting, but like if we're looking for ceiling, I think he gives you a really good shot in year 1. You kind of outproduce those guys, and then the dart throws T-Law for me. If you really want to like go hyper brain, and they can go for it.
So we're 15 guys. I'm 15 players in tier 5. Is there anyone, like we basically talked my tiers. Is there anyone that you guys do have included in these top 5 tiers that we haven't mentioned, or are we basically consensus for who's top 15 here?
Yeah. And once we get into that next tier, it's go ahead.
My 15 is Matt Stafford, and we haven't talked about him.
Yeah.
I just think with a healthy Cup and Puka, assuming those guys are good, whatever they're doing with Kyron, returning punts now, and Blake Corum, I just think they're set up. The line has to hold. That's kind of the concern there, but Stafford is good enough to get the ball out quickly. We've heard all about Jordan Whittington in camp. Of course, do not sleep on Demarcus Robinson. He's going to be the clear wide receiver 3, and Stafford loves him. I think the question mark is going to be tight end, whether it's, I believe it's Parkinson over there, whether he is, doing that, when Higbee's going to come back. But if Parkinson can hold it down until Higbee comes back, I mean, they have a fully functional offense over there. You got McVay and 2 stud wide receivers. So I think Stafford is going to have another big year.
See, and I have them, or I have Stafford another tier down. If you went into my tier 6, it's Tua and Herbert. And then tier 7 for me is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 guys that we'll call the safe old guys. It's Cousins, Stafford, Watson, Geno, Rodgers, and Baker. I don't necessarily have them in that order. Stafford is the top of that tier, but I think I would prefer Tua and Herbert over them. I don't know. Maybe that's just my dynasty brain still refusing to accept that Stafford could be better. But I don't know. I think there's more. For me, I have tier 6 of Tua and Herbert because I feel like there's more upside. Maybe there's a little more risk because they're both a little more unknown. I just find that with the 7 guys in the old guy tier for me, I know exactly what I'm getting. And I don't think any of them have top 3 QB potential where I could see a scenario as unlikely as it is where Herbert bounces back and is a stud again. So I don't know. That's where the difference is for me. How do you guys see the 2 young guys and then the 6 or 7 old guys?
So my tier, I'll tell you what my tier 4. I guess it's my tier 4. So it's
yeah.
T-Law at 13, Purdy at 14, Herbert at 15. I have Goff at 16, Geno Smith at 17, Matt Stafford at 18, and then 2 is my cutoff at 19. The reason I'm just a little bit lower on Kirk O'James, who's one of my favorite all-time quarterbacks for fantasy, and Aaron Rodgers is the injuries. Like they're coming back from the injuries, so I want to see them back at that level before I'm drafting them above those guys. But if you want to make the case for them, like I love both of those guys, what they do for fantasy, like they could absolutely smash. So yeah, but they fall down to that Will Levis, Baker Mayfield range for me. But yeah, so my tier 4 is kind of wide. It's about 7 players.
Yep. My tier 4 is 6 players, and I have Geno at the end of it as well. So it's Caleb, Daniels, 12, 13, Goff, Stafford, Tua, and then Geno. I don't love Tua. I just think he's in the perfect situation. Geno is going to bounce back. I will stake my fantasy reputation on the Seattle offense bouncing back this year. Are they going to win games? I don't know. The defense is atrocious, but at least they're going to have to score fantasy points. So I believe in Geno. I believe in everything they're doing over there on the offensive side of the football. So he's my 17. And then Aaron, you mentioned, so I'll just jump into tier 5 because you mentioned Lawrence and Herbert. They're my 18 and 19, and they start my tier 5. And then I have the old guys, Rodgers, Cousins, Baker is in there at 22, and Darnold at 23 to round off tier 5.
I have that old guy tier in just one big cluster. And that's why when I'm in a spot like that, I think I just take normally the last guy. It seems everybody has a guy or 2 in that range they love and a few they hate. Like I like Cousins. Stafford I'm pretty high on. I think as scary as it is, Deshaun Watson is the guy I like most in this tier. Obviously, he could just be completely done. But, he could. But before the suspension, he was a top 5 quarterback every year. I don't think he's ever that again, but I think it's possible that with a full season to get in rhythm here, I think he's a top 12 quarterback again. And I don't necessarily know if I believe, or even top 10, I don't necessarily know if I think Cousins is going to, I think Cousins, Geno, Rodgers, Stafford, their best case scenario for all of them, I think is a back end QB1. Like you're looking at 12, 13, 14 here. Whereas I think Watson has the most upside. He's also the most likely in this group to be just completely washed. I guess the other 2, like Rodgers, I don't know. Maybe I grew up in Detroit. Maybe I just hate Aaron Rodgers, but I don't ever find myself taking Rodgers. And then I also find Geno and Mayfield to have some risk. Like Mayfield, I think, is a little less risky, but Geno essentially had one good season out of 12 years and then reverted. Baker had one really good fantasy season and then a bunch of average ones. Like, what do we think of Geno and Baker here? Do we think they are potential back-end QB1s again, or was this a mirage? And they're just like, Derek Carr, they had one. That's a bad comparison, but they had one really good season and they're just going to be middling QB2s now. So exclude what I said in comparing Derek Carr. Do we think Geno and Baker can return to low-end QB1 territory? Are they just 15 to 18 overall guys? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I think Geno has higher upside than Baker. Both of these guys got the Dave Canales experience the last 2 years, and we saw how it impacted their ceiling cases. The difference is I just think Geno's a better quarterback who can do more than Baker Mayfield. And he also has a better situation around him with the players. Now he gets like the guy that everybody loves in Ryan Grubb. So I think his situation compared to Liam Cohen in Tampa is a little bit better, and that's why I'm betting on Geno, where I could see it. He was the QB8 2 years ago. Baker Mayfield points per game like QB12 last year, so it's a little bit lower. But it's similar. Like you can talk yourself in either one of those. I just think with these kind of older passing quarterbacks, you want to chase the ceiling. And we've seen Aaron Rodgers, we've seen Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was the QB6 last year. Aaron Rodgers has been like the QB1 before. It's just there's not much like rushing upside for those guys. So I think you can talk yourself in the top 5, maybe.
When you say situation is better for Geno, are you talking coaching staff, you believe, or are you talking the overall weapons around him? Because I interpreted it as the weapons. I don't necessarily agree. I think it because I'm looking, we've got Evans, Godwin, and Rashad White on one side. Then on the other side, you've got, I'm counting DK Metcalf, JSN, and Ken Walker. I don't think there's much left in Lockett. I think I'd rather have Baker's top 3 than Geno's top 3. You guys wouldn't?
Not for me. No.
It's really it's similar. It's just more I like what they're going to do with this offense. And I've seen Geno play at a higher QB level than Baker. On individual throws, making reads and stuff like that. The stuff I've seen from Geno is better than what I've seen from Baker, so that's why I'm kind of betting on him a little bit. And his skill set matches really well with what Ryan Grubb wants to do in his pocket navigation, so that's why I'm really high on Geno this year. But yeah, it's a similar bet. I'm not going to be they're super far apart. They're in the same tier for me, for that reason, because they both can be that upside. I think.
Yeah,
I just think they're asking them to do more.
It's a similar bet on the wide receivers. I think those guys are similar from those teams. It's not in the running backs. I think, by far, Kenneth Walker is so much better than whatever Tampa Bay has going on in their backfield. So for me, that's massive. The other thing I want to consider, and I'm trying to stall a little bit because I'm trying to find the exact PFF offensive line rating. But both of these lines are kind of mediocre. When you look at the rankings, Tampa is 17th. Seattle is, I don't even know where Seattle is, probably worse.
Low.
Yeah. They're 31st. But yeah, they could pull it together. Who knows? But I think Geno, like you said, is the more capable quarterback, and he can navigate that. Baker Mayfield without Dave Canales, I'm not confident that he's going to be able to do that, and that's why I have Geno 5 spots higher than Baker.
But see, for fantasy, Rashad White's going higher than Ken Walker and outproduced Ken Walker so far through his career. I think you could be right in the end. I think Seattle could have better weapons. If Seattle proves to have better top 3 than Tampa, I think the answer is because JSN has exploded and is a top 15 receiver, which I agree could be very possible. I think Lockett's going to be slowly phased out, and I'm betting on JSN, but I think at this point, I'd rather have the Bucs weapons, but I think come the end of the season, it could be Seattle. So it's obviously you're buying into the JSN, taking the next step. So I think that's for me the difference here. Go ahead.
And Lockett, though. I don't think you can sleep on Tyler Lockett. He's still going to do what Tyler Lockett does. I think JSN takes a step forward, and Tyler Lockett continues. Now, his numbers might come down, but I believe he still did 1,000 yards or close to it last year. He's always roughly hovering around 1,100 yards consistently. Now that's going to change. For the last couple of years, I don't know about last year. And then he would get 7, 8 touchdowns, and at some points double digits. Now I think he's probably in that range where he's kind of pushing for 1,000 and probably 6 touchdowns. but JSN should be right around that, probably exceed that, be the number 2, and DK is just going to do what DK does. And if this offense is anything like what the offenses were in years past, that means 1,350 yards, double-digit touchdowns for DK. And so you start adding all that up, you see Kenneth Walker participating more in the passing game with Charbonnet. Fanta's still there. He's an option. So I just really like what's going on in Seattle personally.
I have
Kenneth Walker over White.
Well. I have a hot take. Okay, yeah, I won't argue that one, but my hot take is at the end of the season, Jalen McMillan finishes higher than Tyler Lockett. I have more faith in McMillan.
I actually would not be surprised by that. We've seen Lockett. He had his lowest yards per out run since like 6 years ago. Like, it's coming down for Lockett. You can kind of see he's on the endward trajectory. The other thing is, like, Mike Evans is also in that similar age. So if Mike Evans starts to hit that age cliff, which we talk about, which I don't think he's going to because he was awesome last year. He had maybe his best year of his career. But, like, it's going to come in that discussion for Mike Evans soon, too. So I think you kind of have to bake in the age for both these guys. And I agree. I think McMillan's underrated, but it's really just you're battling McMillan versus Lockett. And it would not shock me to see those guys have similar S seasons, just because JSN should be on the come up, and they're kind of crossing. So it'll be fun discussion to see, look back in the years, how close we are. I think the line is what limits Seattle. If the line falls apart, this offense goes in the tank. This happened last year. So the line needs to figure it out.
I think in the end, I do agree with Geno over Baker, but for me, it's not even necessarily system or weapons. If you look, it's touchdown upside. Baker is typically at best 22 to 25 touchdowns. Geno has hit 30. I get it. He only hit it once, but I just think Geno if you told me which one is more likely to throw more than 30 touchdowns this year, I think it's easily Geno. And as I said, I like McMillan, but I'm a big believer in JSN being with Jameson Williams on my list of, I think they're the two guys that, everyone targets the year 2 and 3 guys. I think those two are going to be the breakouts where they just absolutely go off. We got a little sidetracked there on that group, but that tells you how clustered it is between, I had the 2 young guys and then a whole bunch of older guys. Aaron Rodgers is one we didn't really discuss. He scares me. I think he's a statue of a quarterback. I love Garrett Wilson. I think Breece Hall is going to have a huge workload. I'm not really all that fond of any of the other weapons in this Jets offense. So how much can Garrett Wilson really carry this as a passing volume? I don't know. What do you guys think here for Rodgers?
I think it's highly dependent on that offense. And it seems like it's hyper fragile build what New York is doing because it's Breece Hall and it's freaking Garrett Wilson. And there is not much else there. Like, they rebuilt the offensive line, they structured all of that, but it really depends on if Aaron Rodgers can show what he has previously. Because 2 years ago, he had one of his worst seasons in a long time where his numbers kind of regressed. He wasn't the peak Aaron Rodgers, so it's more if he can get back to that ceiling or not with Aaron Rodgers. I don't mind betting on him in this range. I think he's a fun bet. And if it all works out, he could put up another 40 touchdown season because he's Aaron freaking Rodgers. So, like, I don't want to bet him, but he's pushing 40. That age cliff comes for him too at quarterbacks. I'm gonna grab my daughter real quick, so I'll be back.
Yeah.
I think it's very likely what we see from him. A couple of years ago when he played in 2022, his last year in Green Bay, he only played 13 games. He played all 17 games, but finished as the quarterback 13 overall. I think that's kind of his ceiling. He only threw 26 touchdowns. Getting to 30 touchdowns on this team is going to be really difficult for Aaron Rodgers. However, I am also of the mind that I've been thinking about this for a couple of days. I think Aaron Rodgers is totally milking this hobbling in front of the cameras sort of thing. I don't think he's that bad as a mobile guy. I would not be shocked if he came out, showed that he was completely fine, went off in week 1 and threw 4 touchdowns and 350 yards. That's not something he's going to be able to do week on week like he was in his prime. But I think Aaron Rodgers is kind of a solid bet over Kirk Cousins to light it up for fantasy. That being said, I really don't want to bet on either of these guys on my fantasy teams. And I, like you were talking about earlier, Aaron, I want to take a shot on one of these rookies a little bit later in like the 9th, 10th round, or that's Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, or I want a quarterback probably in the Love Dak range if I'm waiting, but not waiting too long.
The Achilles doesn't even necessarily sell him as a statue for me. I believe that, don't believe it. You look back and essentially the last time, like, he put up 269 rushing yards in 2018. But aside from that, it was like 2015, 2016, he ran a ton of, 350-ish yards. Other than that, it's basically a lot of 126, 149, 109. Like it's like 5 to 10 yards a game in most. Like I just don't think he has any rushing upside. So you have a quarterback who hasn't showed much rushing in 4 or 5 years, coming off an Achilles. He's 40. Who knows how much he's tripping balls out there on fucking magic mushrooms and whatever he's doing. So I don't know. I don't want to trust a 40-year-old guy coming off a bad Achilles on magic mushrooms to have rushing upside. I don't know about you. This is not Super Mario.
But the other thing too with Rodgers is his defense is insane. I mean, I think the Jets are going to be the best defense in the league this year, and I don't even really think it's close. I just think the way that they have it schemed up over there, I think they're going to play a bit more ball control offense. And those running backs, you got Breece Hall, obviously, we love him, stud. Braylon Allen has looked awesome. I think once he's fully up to speed and feels comfortable, he's going to be getting work. And then who's the number 3 over there, the rookie?
Malachi
Corley. But you're saying their defense
running back.
Is that a Bonaconda?
No, I can't remember the other one. But yeah,
Braylon Allen?
No. So I'm saying that they have a good 1-2 punch already. Breece getting a crap ton of work, and then you have Braylon Allen, who I think will start to work in heavily as soon as he's up to speed. And then Abonaconda has been fine, but I think there's another guy in between.
Oh, it's Isaiah Davis. I don't know why he would play over Abonaconda. I don't think he's very good.
Well, I don't think Abonaconda is very good, but I think my point is that they have those guys and they want to utilize the running game certainly there. And Atlanta's in a similar situation, right? Not as great of a defense, but guys in the running game that they want to utilize. So either of these two guys, Rodgers, Cousins, not super high on them to go out and dominate for fans.
You were saying the Jets defense, though, as a negative for his overall outlook, right? Because I think the Jets defense being so good is going to limit his fantasy production because obviously I think they're going to play slower, and I don't think they have the weapons to be in shootouts like Detroit. So
yeah, it's an efficiency case with Rodgers, right? I think sometimes we take it a little too far with these defenses, right? Because you want defenses that can get teams off the field so you can score as many times as possible. So we don't want these awful, just horrible defenses that wear them out. So there's a fine line with it, but it's really just bet on Aaron Rodgers what it comes down to if you're comfortable with it or not.
All right, take a deep breath, get your barf bag out.
Well, hang on before we talk about that crap. Let's just put a bow on Rodgers. I mean, if I have a 40-year-old quarterback and I'm up 3 touchdowns by halftime, he's coming out of the game, and I'm going to sit on my defense. I'm going to sit on my running game. So that's another consideration. I mean, Rodgers does not need to play all of these games if they get out of hand, and the Jets have the weapons in place, especially on the defensive end, to make sure that games don't get out of hand. They're not going to be able to do it all the time, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Rodgers sitting down a couple of times in the fourth quarter this season.
Ugh. I don't even want to say this. So for me, the next tier has 3, and I could be convinced to have 4. I have Will Levis, who I think is, this is going to sound like an insult, but it's not. I think it's another Sam Howell. You'll remember, though, that I loved Sam Howell. I think if Sam Howell had been given a fair shake, I thought he was poor man dollar store Josh Allen. He had games where he just showed he had 400-yard upside and 4 touchdowns, but then he had games where he was going to turn the ball over 6 times. I think he needed to be given another shot. So I think Will Levis is going to do that. He's going to put up 30 points, 40 points, and then 0 points. Next up, I have Bo Nix, who I have more faith in than most. I think he's a mid-range QB2, low-end QB2 here. I don't even know if he was an NFL quarterback, but I think he's the perfect fit in this system where they're going to run him and turn him into dollar store Drew Brees, where it's just check down, check down, check down. They might turn Marvin Mims into Slant Man 2.0 or whatever. Then I have Daniel Jones just because I believe there's still some rushing upside. I get it. Their weapons suck. I don't think Jones is this bad. And you could convince me to add Bryce Young to this as the last guy in the tier. I don't have him in this tier, but he's going to get another shot to do it. The weapons are a little bit retooled. I don't know if they're necessarily better, but for me, I have this. Actually, I have it in a different order. I have it as Daniel Jones, Will Levis, Bo Nix, and then Bryce Young as the 4th. How do you guys have this?
Yeah, if we're putting these rookies in here, we got to throw Drake May in this because the rushing upside Drake May gives you is insanely high. So
for me, I don't have Drake May because I don't think Drake May starts for the first month or so. That's why I moved like, Drake May out for this.
Yeah, like my thought process is like I don't want to be in this tier of quarterbacks. I actually have Will Levis above with the previous group because what they're bringing over with Callahan and how the offense is going to pass a lot. Like they're going to pass a lot with Levis. So, and we know he's starting. We know he's playing. He had the highest A depth in like the 8 out in the league of all quarterbacks. He was chucking it downfield. So it's really high variance with Levis like workout. But my thought process with Drake May is like you want these mobile rushing quarterbacks late. So like the Bo Nix, who he can give you some mobile rushing upside. Drake May the same thing too. These guys because Bryce Young, I still like. There's upside. Like he's running a capable offense we've seen in the preseason, but I do worry like how much they're going to depend on him because they've already said they want to run a ton in Carolina this year. With difference being like New England and Denver when those guys are starting, like they're going to give the ball to the quarterback to do those things. So I think they can give you more upside than some of the other guys in there. It's in this range. It's just kind of tough. And Daniel Jones, yeah, same thing. It's rushing upside, and he's already done it before, and he gets Malik Neighbors, so he actually has a viable weapon. So I'm fine with Daniel Jones in this range. It's just they could end up benching Daniel Jones at the end of the year. So it's kind of the opposite of what they're doing with Drake May. If it falls apart, they could just bench him at the end of the year because they want that good, like the high upside pick next year. So I think there's a little bit of variance with Jones too.
Yeah. For me in this tier, it's so it starts with 24. It's Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, Will Levis, Bryce Young, and Bo Nix at 29, rounding it out. The young guys, I just think, there's the opportunity. Those guys can fill out the stat sheet here and there, but I agree with you, Aaron, that they're probably more boom bust. And yeah, Daniel Jones, I believe he's going to start all season. I don't think he's starting next season, probably won't start anywhere next season. But I think they don't have better options in New York. Daniel
Can
Jones
you run through that tier one more time? You started it with with Deshaun Watson at 34, and I think I had a stroke and didn't process the rest of it because I said, "What? Deshaun Watson's still down here?" You lost me after that. I had a stroke and didn't process the rest of your list. Please repeat what you said.
I put Deshaun Watson over crap Derek Carr and crap Daniel Jones, but Deshaun Watson is still crap Deshaun Watson. And then I put him over these younger guys like Levis, Young, and Nix simply because I'm just not a big believer that they're actually the guys, but I do know that they're going to be playing. So we'll see. I think Bryce Young is most likely to bounce back. I'm just not confident that that's going to happen in year one with Canales. In his second year, I think they need to figure that out. And I don't think Leggette's the guy. He looked good. But, Terrace Marshall already gone. Those weapons are still not great. Brooks, who knows when he's going to be back. So, and that line is still not good. So, yeah, I think Young is going to take longer.
So you put Deshaun Watson in the same tier as Captain Guyliner?
Yes.
No happy endings for you.
I think he's. Well, I will have a happy ending because I will not have Deshaun Watson on my team. So I got a chance to make the championship, man. Like, no, I'm not buying in. I don't think it's going to happen.
His shoulder is really what worries me about Deshaun Watson. I have him above with Sam Darnold. He's my QB 25. So my tier 6, I guess I should describe this rightly. It's Daniel Jones, QB 26. Bryce Young's QB 27. Drake May, QB 28. Bo Nix, QB 29. Derek Carr, QB 30. And Russell Wilson, QB 31. Because as ugly as Russell Wilson does, he gives you the points per game. It's ugly. You don't want it, but you'll be like QB 15 on the year if he's playing. It's just the whole, like, we don't know how long he's going to play for.
Dangerous.
I call this the tier you fucked up if you waited this long to take a quarterback. You don't want to wait this long. Do not wait this long to take a quarterback because you're
Deshaun Watson throws what, right-handed?
Possibly.
So if he has his right arm amputated, he still is better than Derek Carr.
He's just running for just getting obliterated.
He could have his right leg amputated with it and still be better than Derek Carr.
Pirate Deshaun. Yeah, I'm gonna stop that.
Correct. Yeah.
Derek Carr should go play for the Buccaneers.
He would fit. It would be a very good fit.
If nothing else, he could just be the pirate who fires off the cannon. All right. So my next tier is where it's even worse. So I have Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Drake May, and then for me, it's basically you pick a Raiders starting quarterback. I think it's Gardner Minshew, and then it's all backups left. So this is the final tier I have. Having said that, I own 0 shares of Darnold, Carr. I think I have 1 or 2 May. I have 1 or 2 Wilson, and I have 1 Minshew because I fucked up bad, real bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the big guy on Drake May. I think you're just betting on talent. He's far superior of every other quarterback as far as talent goes in this range. Like he's the guy that gives you we talk about Drake May completely different next year. If it looks okay and he does good things for you, like you watch him run, do things like that. I think it's just a different range of outcomes with him, but you have to be a little bit patient with him. So in redraft, I don't really want to stash Drake May, unless it's a super. These are all like super flex only options, anyways. But if you're taking a Raiders quarterback, like what are you doing? Gardner Minshew was 12 points per game last year. Aiden O'Connell was worse. So what are you going to do? Put up 10? They start a kicker over these guys. They'll probably give you more points per game. So yeah, I'm not doing a Raiders quarterback. There's no way. Like you can't pay me to take a Raiders quarterback.
If you're drafting a Raiders quarterback. If you're drafting a Raiders quarterback, it's because you punted QB 1 and 2, and the guys in your dynasty league drafted 3 and 4 quarterbacks before you even got to it. That's what happened. I have that dynasty: Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, both Raiders quarterbacks.
That sounds so much better than the Raiders quarterbacks to me. Those two guys, I'm like, okay, I can stomach that Raiders quarterback. I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's really bad. Gardner Minshew is my 32nd ranked quarterback. That means he is the last ranked starting quarterback for me. So, don't do it. Jacoby Brissett, I've ranked over Gardner Minshew because I think he starts a majority, if not all of the season. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah. But if he plays half the games, I think he probably scores more than Gardner Minshew. So I have Brissett 31 and May 34.
But it's interesting you bring that up because there were 2 other names that I have outside the top 32 that I thought warranted at least a discussion. That was one of them in Jacoby Brissett. The other is Justin Fields. Yep. I get it. They're obviously super flex options. Do we have any hope of either of them? I get like Jacoby Brissett. It's you have Drake May and you have no choice but to start him. Yep. Justin Fields is the more interesting one where I think, it's possible he takes over the job. It's like there's QB1, not overall, but top 12 potential there. Obviously, Brissett, it's a plug and play if you get stuck with him. But what do we feel about Justin Fields here? I think we all agree. They announced it's Russ as the starter, right?
Yep. Yeah. And
they did announce.
There's reports that they want Russell Wilson to potentially be the long-term starter there. So don't
shoot me for
that one. I'm just saying. But my whole thought process with Justin Fields is if he plays, he's top 12 option at minimum. Like he's going to give you like the. So he's far more valuable than anyone in this range. Like if you want to roster him on like a deep, a QB league where you're starting QB quarterbacks, you could roster him on the bench. And if he plays, you plug him in because he can give you top 12 numbers on the minimum. Like he's the only guy you know. He's what?
Why doesn't he request a trade or request his release?
I mean, he got traded for what? A 6th round pick? Like what's his value?
He's the week 1 starter if he goes to Vegas. He's probably the week 1 starter in New Orleans.
That should tell us everything that they signed Gardner Minshew over trading for Justin Fields. Like that tells you how the NFL views Justin Fields. It's like, he's not a good quarterback, but I don't care about that. This is fantasy. The guy's going to score massive 20 points.
Well, I never said he was a good quarterback, but he was a fantasy quarterback. He's a dog shit quarterback, and he went to Ohio State, but for fantasy, he's all right.
Brutal. It's so frustrating watching him play quarterback.
Yeah, it really is. But and I don't think Mike Tomlin is really going to tolerate that. Arthur Smith might find a way to get him on the field and use that. But Mike Tomlin's not really going to tolerate Justin Fields running around. He needs to work within whatever the Arthur Smith structure is. I don't think anyone has figured that out in the fantasy space yet. What that structure is. But Russell Wilson will do that. I mean, for all of his faults in 6-point passing leagues, he was QB 14 last year, even though he had a bad season. So he can still put up reasonable fantasy numbers. But yeah, he's in the 30s for all of us because, we just don't believe in him or that team or that offense. I mean, it's a problem over there. You want Justin Fields. If he's starting, you do not want Russell Wilson.
If I knew if either one of these guys were starting like the whole season, they would be significantly higher. It's just like I expect them to be interchangeable. So that's the whole issue. Like if Russell was playing the whole season, he'd be like my quarterback 20. Fields would be even higher because of the upside he presents you, right?
I get that this is redraft based, but it's amazing how quickly the landscape can change in value in Dynasty, even for a first rounder. And this is the same league where was it last year? No, the beginning of last offseason. So this a little before this time last year, I traded away Justin Fields for 2 firsts, and everyone laughed at me because he was QB6 that season. like coming off QB6. And then I was trying to make up it, and I tried to buy Daniel Jones for 2 first rounders, and that was declined. So a year later, you couldn't get a first rounder. You'd be what? You get a third rounder for both of them. Like maybe Daniel Jones is still worth a second, but Justin Fields, you could get him for what? Probably a second or third rounder this year. So
in super flex leagues, you can get him. I mean, it's gonna be hard to get him for as cheap as a second, just because the upside he presents to you. But yeah, like I don't think you're getting him for a first. So he's that too. Yeah,
it's amazing how quickly they go from QB 6, 7 to I'm not giving you a third rounder for that guy. So.
The Sam Howell thing, same thing, right? Like they're gonna give you points when they produce, but there's just no security. So
this is why I sell high on everyone. And I forget what running back it was Tony Pollard. Same league. It's a lot of the guys in that dynasty league with my work guys. I got a first rounder plus for both Stevenson and Pollard the year after they looked great, and they were going to be the guy. A year later, I wouldn't give you a first for either one of them. So this is why I'm a big fan of the old stock market approach and just selling everyone high. And eventually, I did this same thing with I sold Amon-Ra St. Brown for a first rounder plus, and sure, 2 years later, I regret it. But out of 20 of those trades I've made, I regret one of them. The other 19, it's like fucking sucker. But so I think that's pretty much a wrap on our lovely collection of shit end quarterbacks here. I'm trying to look through the list. There's not really anyone else worthwhile. Any final thoughts here, guys?
Don't get into the late. Like, cut it off. Like for me, the cutoff is that tier 5. Like Deshaun Watson's
perfect
the last
ending
guy.
question. Yeah,
Deshaun Watson's the last guy I'm comfortable drafting. Just no, just don't do it.
That's 18 for me, I think. 18 is that group. And then so maybe it's 20 for me, because after that, I have Rodgers and I have Mayfield. So there's still, but like it gets ugly real quick. So,
yeah. I think my thoughts on quarterback this year is I want Patrick Mahomes. I think he's going off and he's undervalued because he's a QB, 3 off the board, 2 or 3, depending on where you can get him. I think he's going to go absolutely insane. Same old Patrick Mahomes. Forget last year. I want a rookie, Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, because the value is nice in the 9th round. Go ahead and grab one of those guys if you don't have a quarterback yet. And if you wait late, I'm okay with Stafford or Geno. Those are the 2 guys that I'm targeting super late.
Yeah,
so
100%.
in the end, your big risky take, your hot take on the episode is take the guy who's won the last 2 Super Bowls. You really put yourself out there on that one, hey?
What is he, QB2, QB3? That's ridiculous. He's the number 1 quarterback. Okay.
Way to take risks, Jeremy. Way to take risks.
Hey, I'm a big risk taker. Josh Allen is my QB2 on the season. So massive risk there.
I was about to make a joke and say my hot take's going to be make sure you take CJ Stroud if he falls to the 10th round. But I was doing a draft the other day and it's single QB, but I actually got Richardson in the 10th round in one of them. And I was like,
that's crazy.
I guess I can't make that joke. So single QB, but still 10th round.
Like what is going on here? 10th round. People are dumb.
Well, the funny part is the first
don't be dumb like Aaron's league mates.
No, the first 4 quarterbacks went in like rounds 2 and 3. They went really high. And then we had CJ Stroud. So it was like first 4 go in rounds 2 and 3. CJ Stroud goes in round like 6. No quarterbacks till round 10. And I'm sitting there, but I started my draft in like the first 3 rounds. I got JT and I have Pittman. So I'm sitting there going, I can't take another fucking Colt. I'll pass on. I just passed on Richardson. So I'm looking at him in the 3rd round going, I can't take him. I can't have this many Colts. 4th round. I can't take him. 5th round, I can't. By the 10th round, I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. I'll have another quarterback for that round, for that week.
Right?
I would be having the time of my life here in the 10th round.
That's it.
All right. Well, that is a wrap on quarterbacks. What are we doing tomorrow? Wide receivers, running backs? I can't remember which is next.
I think it's wide receivers. Yeah.
I think it's wide receivers. But that's how we're gonna end our off-season coverage here. We're going to do back-to-back days of running backs and wide receivers before we start with some live shows. I believe that is on Wednesday with our first preview. So we'll be back the next 2 days at noon for wide receivers and running backs. And if you want, we have a whole bunch of stuff popping off over on our fantasyfootballuniverse.com where, it's blowing up lately. We've got must avoid, must draft players. I know most of you are either done your drafts or you're doing them tonight, tomorrow night. I think I got one tonight, one tomorrow, maybe one tonight, 2 tomorrow. I have a day draft tomorrow. So head over to the website, check that out, or check back tomorrow and the next day for wide receivers and running backs. Thank you all for tuning in. Take care. Have a great day.